The year 2016 marks the 250th anniversary of the world's first Freedom of Information law. It was Sweden that took that first bold step. Canada came late to the effort, waiting until the 1980s to make the right to know the law of the land. And advocates say there's more to do to make this tool of transparency really work to hold governments to account. Joining us now for their views on freedom of information. In Paris, France, via Skype, Suzanne Legault. She is Information Commissioner of Canada. In Calgary, Alberta, Sean Holman, Professor of Journalism at Mount Royal University. And here in our studio, Jamie Poisson, investigative reporter at the Toronto Star. And it's good to have everybody here alongside for our discussion this evening on something that goes back to 250 years ago this past Friday around the world. But Sean, I'll get you into this first. For us here in Canada, it certainly doesn't go back that far. Can you just help us with some of the history here? How and why did we get freedom of information laws in Canada in the 1980s?
Absolutely. So the history of freedom of information in Canada actually began around 1965 with two men, Barry Mather and Don Rowett. Now, Barry Mather was actually a former Vancouver Sun humor columnist. He was a French page columnist for the Vancouver Sun, and he became an NDP MP. And in 1965, he introduced the country's first Freedom of Information Bill. It was then called an Administrative Disclosure Bill. So he's the guy that really got the ball rolling. And then a little bit after that, Don Rowett, who is a Carleton University political science professor, he published an academic paper entitled How Much Administrative Secrecy around the same time. And these two gentlemen were really pushing this idea of freedom of information at a time when forces were demanding more and more information from the state. So we had the investigative journalism movement, we had the consumer movement, we had the environmental movement, we had the participatory democracy movement, all these forces really asking, demanding for more information from the government, not just in Canada, but elsewhere throughout the Anglosphere. And so government, which was during much of this period a liberal government, wasn't completely unsympathetic to these demands. They thought providing more information to the public would sort of help feelings of public alienation and ignorance, which was a really big concern back then. But at the same time, those demands for information were really resisted by the built-in secrecy of Canada's political system. And in fact, there was a Privy Council official by the name of D.F. Wall around this time who wrote a report recommending against freedom of information because of this built-in secrecy. So when I talk about built-in secrecy, I'm talking about cabinet secrecy, I'm talking about civil service anonymity. Because the idea in our system of government is you have cabinet, go behind closed doors, and this is the most important decision-making body in government. They have a discussion, come out of that room with a decision everyone has agreed to uphold, and then they articulate that decision in Parliament where it's discussed and criticized, but really not debated.
Right. So, Sean, let me jump in here for a second, because I do want to get a better understanding of why, if it was the mid-1960s that the first sort of nudging towards freedom of information took place, why it was another couple of decades before we actually got a law.
Yeah, I mean, so it really was because of that resistance to openness, because of sort of that built-in secrecy in our political system. You had a real reluctance on the part of government to let the public in on their decision-making processes, because we have this assumption in Canada that privacy is necessary for decision-making, that people wouldn't be able to give honest advice, people wouldn't be able to have honest discussions if the public could see and if they could potentially be embarrassed by the disclosure of those conversations, of those decisions. So it's this sort of societal assumption that is really, really baked in to Canada that caused us to really wait until 1980 before the Access to Information Act was introduced, and then it would be another 3 years before it actually became law.
So it was actually the current Prime Minister's father's government who put it through.
That's exactly right. And it was actually the current Prime Minister's father's government that resisted the idea of freedom of information for such a very long time. Joe Clark, when he was Prime Minister, did try to introduce a Freedom of Information bill, but unfortunately when his government was defeated, that bill disappeared.
Okay, let's get to more current days then. And Sheldon, if you would, let's put this graphic up to sort of tell everybody where we have come over the past few decades. Between 2014 and 15, there were more than 68,000 requests for access to information here in Canada. That was an increase of 13.5% from 2013. And of those requests, we're told almost two-thirds were completed within 30 days. Having said all that, Suzanne Legault, let me go to you right now. Give us a sense of how you would characterize today in Canada the system we have as it relates to access to information.
Well, I think the short way to describe it is that the system is in need of fixing. It's definitely in need of reform. And by the way, in 16-17, we probably have up to 75,000 requests. So I think when we look at the system, we have to look at several things. We have to look at the legislative framework. I mean, as Sean said, it dates back to the 1980s. It really has not been significantly reformed and modernized since that time. So when I talk about the Act, internationally, certainly, I talk about the grandmother of legislations in access to information, because there have been, since the 1980s, close to 100 new laws. So there are lots of examples. Canada ranks fairly low in its legislative framework and needs to be updated to account for new technologies, the new ways that the government is functioning, and also citizens' expectations in the world of the internet, which really started in 1983.
Jamie,
Second,
sorry, let me just get Jamie's take on that. From your perch now as a journalist who uses this law in order to help you do what you do, how would you characterize where we're at today?
So I say that absolutely, this is a tremendous tool for journalists or the public to use to get information. The idea behind access to information is that we have a right to government-held records. And I think absolutely the way the system works, there's checks and balances, and we get information out of this process that we wouldn't get if perhaps we asked for this information informally. Having said that, I am in complete agreement with the Commissioner that the laws that govern how we access government-held records are old and desperately need to be modernized. And the system that supports it also needs more resources. It's plagued with delays, for example, and I think in part that is because we have access departments that don't have enough staff. We need more education around how to use these laws and tips and tricks in order to navigate a system, which can be a bit tricky.
Tips and tricks means what?
So as a journalist, you sort of build up a lot of tips and tricks to navigate these laws. I like to try and work backwards. So if there's an idea that I have for a story, let's say tracking water safety, water quality. What I want to find first is who is in control of records that would track something like water quality. So you want to find out the ministry that's in control of those records. Then you want to try and find out what department is in control of those records. And once you have a bit of information, then you can file from there. Record retention schedules, which are sort of an inventory of all of the records that an organization has in its possession, are a great way to do that. Talking to people who work in these bureaucracies is also a great way to find that out. So stuff like that. Going through completed access requests can give you lots of ideas. Following current court cases or current decisions made by the information commissioners also gives you lots of ideas. My colleague Jessie McLean recently won an appeal for the police notes that were produced as part of the Rob Ford investigation, and the adjudicator agreed that we could have these police notes because it was a great public interest. And so now I can think of many other cases in which we could be asking for police notes, an investigation into a sexual assault on a university campus.
Commissioner, let me just make sure that we have a better understanding of what you actually do. We heard Sean off the top say that it's in government's interest most often to deny information to the public that the public wants. And I wonder whether your job is more along the lines of helping them keep things secret or helping open things up more. How would you say it?
Well, we're basically there to oversee and investigate the government's decision on disclosures and the timeliness of that disclosure. So we respond to complaints, we do investigations of two types really. If the response from the government is late, and if you consider that the response of the government is not in accordance with the law as it stands. And that's what we do. So we basically work towards timely and maximum disclosure.
And Sean, I note that when you made a submission to the House of Commons, to one of the subcommittees of the Commons, you wrote that the Act as it currently is written, quote, fortified the secrecy that is an inherent part of Canada's political system and culture. I'm inferring from that, and I hope you'll embellish on this, that you don't think we've come far enough in the last half century in terms of our access to information in this country. Is that right?
Oh, not at all. And I think that's a point that is really important to understand, is that when the Access to Information Act was introduced, it was built to protect that built-in secrecy in our political system. So there are a whole bunch of exemptions and exclusions in the Act that are designed to do that. So when I file a request for information, an access to information request, government can apply all of these exemptions and exclusions to ensure that I don't get information that fits within certain categories. And a lot of those categories relate to government decision making. In other words, why government has made a decision. The most important information that we could possibly get from government, why it made a decision, is also information that the government in the Act is often allowed to refuse access to. That seems really weird, especially given the fact that we're supposed to be in a democracy, and you would hope that the government would want an informed electorate and informed consumers to operate in a rational marketplace, in a rational political context, but that's not happening right now. So yes, the laws do need to be modernized, but at the same time, it's really important that we understand that the laws, when they were actually written, were not good to begin with, and we really need to start understanding this culture of secrecy that is part of Canada, is part of our political system, and until we really address that, I don't think anything's going to change.
Let me get the Commissioner on that. Do you think that there are too many exemptions and exclusions as a part of the daily usage of the access to information laws in this country?
Well, I did issue a report last year basically stating that I do believe that the law as it is written now does not strike the right balance between transparency and secrecy. I do believe that there is a certain requirement for some protection of information. One only needs to think about the protection of personal information. But that being said, the exemptions that we have currently in the legislation are pretty much consistent in terms of what we find internationally. The issue that I have, and this is where I agree with Sean, is that the exemptions, the way they are written now, are written in a very, very broad manner. So they are very broad descriptions. They don't really have an end date in time, so they're not limited in their length of time that they apply. They're also not, in most cases, not submitted to a specific injury test. And i.e., what I mean by an injury test is what's the harm in the disclosure. And most of our exemptions under our legislation are not subjected to an overriding public interest test, which I think is really amongst the best national and international standards. So yes, you do require some exemptions. You need to protect some information related to national security, related to personal information, for instance, to protect commercial information. So yes, there is a need for exemptions. They need to be limited. They need to be defined very, very specifically, only to protect the harm and the interest that you're trying to protect. And there has to be a harms test and a public interest override.
And just a quick follow-up, Commissioner. The current federal government, to the best of my knowledge, has said it's open to having a second look at this thing and updating it. Are you satisfied that they're, seized adequately of this issue to make something good happen on it?
Well, I mean, what I've said really, and I still stand by this statement, is I do think the Act is in need of a significant and wholesale review. The report I issued last year contained 85 recommendations, and frankly, I did hold back on some of the recommendations. The Parliamentary Committee in June issued a report with over 30 recommendations for reform. The government has announced that it's going to do a first tier review, which is going to include increased coverage of the Act, which would cover ministers' offices, including the Prime Minister's office. That would include the administration of Parliament and the administration of the courts. So I think those are, this is a good step forward. These are recommendations that I do have in my report. The government has announced that it's going to do a more fulsome review in 2018. My position is I have some concern that the wholesale review in 2018 will not be concluded in time for us to see significant amendments to the Act before the next election.
Let's see how it works right now. Jamie, I mean, you do this all the time, right? So let's just start with some of the basic questions here. Right. Can anybody do this?
Absolutely.
You don't have to be a journalist.
And everybody should. And as journalists, we operate in this system just as citizens.
Okay. You have an inquiry you want to pursue. Yeah. You file an access to information request to the government. Do they have to give you what you want?
No. So as we've been talking about in this discussion, generally the laws say that you have a right to government-held records. But there are exceptions. So personal information is one, national security is another, as the commissioner mentioned.
And what do they do there? Do they just, put a black line through?
Yeah, so
that's what happens.
Sometimes everything you're asking for will be denied, and then you can go back and appeal that decision and ask only for the parts that have personal information in them to be redacted. And other times, departments will sever those parts completely and release them to you. And access departments have a duty to assist you as a citizen.
They have a duty to assist.
It is enshrined in the legislation.
And how good are they at doing that?
I think they're very professional.
They are.
And if you work with them, they work with you. And so it is incumbent upon us as well to inform ourselves of how this act works and what it says, and then to try and have discussions with the access officers. They might help you narrow the scope of your request. They might come back to you and say you can't have this, but perhaps you can have other records.
How much does it cost?
It costs $5 to make a request, and the federal government has done away with fees, so that's an incredible thing. I would just point out that the Ontario government has not, and I think that is a huge problem and prohibitive. So I've recently had a request for reports that deal with people who are in government care with physical and disabilities, mm-hmm. and I asked for reports for when they had been physically restrained in care, and it came back with a $50,000 price tag.
Whoa! For what?
For search fees and
Xeroxing?
Yeah, for Xeroxing,
really?
And for government officials to go through these documents. And so,
what'd you do when you got the $50,000 bill?
Well, as you know, news organizations can't exactly pay $50,000. We have there are avenues we can appeal and ask for fee waivers. Obviously, we at the Toronto Star believe that this information is in the public interest, so we'd like to try and get it.
So it's free federally, except for the $5 charge.
Yes.
But provincially, it could be huge.
Absolutely, and I would also note that while the federal government has committed to a review of the Act, the Ontario government has done nothing. And there are the same issues with the Ontario laws as there are federally. And those cover all municipalities and also the province. And you have municipalities all over Ontario that probably get very few requests or maybe none at all. And that's a real shame. So I think we need to see this Canada-wide. Yeah.
Sean, let me get your view on this. Journalists are supposed to be very dispassionate in the way they cover events. They're not supposed to have an axe to grind or a dog in the hunt, as the expression goes. In which case, should they, in your view, be advocating for a better functioning, more open access to information law in the country?
Absolutely. Look, democracy and freedom of information is a precondition for a well-functioning news media, for a well-functioning fourth estate. And I think in this country, Canadian journalists have not been the advocates they should have been when it comes to freedom of information.
That's because they're not supposed to advocate.
Yeah, well, if you compare the history of freedom of information in the United States to the history of freedom of information in Canada, you see a lot more journalism activism around freedom of information, pushing the government to get information, pushing the government to introduce freedom of information laws than you do here in Canada. And in fact, at least some news organizations down in the United States make explicit exemptions in their ethics codes that allow journalists to advocate on these kinds of issues. NPR is very explicit about that. In fact, the public radio network down in the United States, they say journalists in the United States should be able to advocate for freedom of information, freedom of expression. Because if we don't have those things, then how are we going to do our jobs? And if we aren't advocating, then who exactly is going to advocate?
Well, let me find that out from Jamie. Jamie,
Yeah.
do you take a political position on this?
Absolutely. Now more than ever, what is most important is robust, fact-based journalism. I mean, we just came off an election in the United States where fake news was all over the place, and the Oxford Dictionary has just coined the term post-truth.
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 That's a new thing.
And look, these documents that you can obtain through this process are the original documents. No one can spin you. This isn't what the government is choosing to release. This is a physical record of what has happened in our government bodies. And so I don't even think it should be a question of whether or not we should be advocating for this. This helps us as journalists do our job better.
Suzanne Legault, I want to get a better understanding from you. Which of the following sentences better characterizes your view on this? This law might have been fine 30 years ago, but we've outgrown it, and it's got to be so much better today, and we're really entitled to much more information than we're getting. Or, you know, it's still pretty amazing how much information we manage to get out of our governments, all of these complaints notwithstanding.
Can I choose both? Because I think both agree. I mean, both are good. You know, we do need to change our legislation. And it's, you know, in Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada has recognized from 1997 that access to information is fundamental to the exercise of our democratic rights. And it's really fundamental for citizens to hold their governments to account. Later, in 2010, the Supreme Court of Canada has also decided that access to information is a derivative right found in Section 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights that protects freedom of expression. So we have a well-entrenched and recognized right to information in Canada. Now, it's important that we have a modern framework that responds to our citizens today. I mean, that we're living a data revolution, and we have a legislation that was basically devised in a paper era. So I think it's really important that we modernize it. But we also have to look at it in the context of open government, which has also changed the importance of the right to information in 2016. Right to information now is also linked to innovation, and it's also linked to government efficiency. And the reason why that is because we want to have open governments by default, where information is shared with citizens so that you can have an open dialogue, you can better develop programs and policies and services. So you create innovation and you create a better and more efficient and more responsive government to the needs of the citizens. So the actual reasons for right to information have also transformed with the new technology and the new citizens' expectations. And so the more the reason to modernize our framework.
Jamie, I'm down to my last minute here, literally, and I want to get a better understanding from you. Are there days when you receive a tranche of information from the government and it's actually not redacted at all, and you think to yourself, Wow, look what you can actually find out.
Yes, last year, my colleague Jesse McLean and I did a series on police discipline cases. And we took a request for decisions, police discipline decisions at Peel Police, all the way to the Information Commissioner of Ontario. We got the records. We wrote a series of stories where there were dozens of cases of drunk driving and sexual harassment within the Peel Police Force. And I thought that was an incredible day.
Big news in the paper. I remember when you reported on that.
It took us a long time to get those records. And so absolutely, this can be a frustrating process. There are so many changes that I would like to see. Maybe the most important one would be a very, very strong public interest override clause, so that all of these exemptions that are applied, if there was a very strong public interest, we would still be able to get this information. But I guess if I could say one thing today, I would say that this is worth fighting for. We have to do more to try to work within the system that we have, and then also try to make better and improve the system that desperately needs to be made better.
Terrific. Thanks to the three of you for coming on our program tonight on this, the 250th anniversary of the first ever freedom of information law in the world. It was in Sweden 250 years ago last Friday. Suzanne Legault, the Information Commissioner of Canada, Sean Holman from Mount Royal University, Jamie Poisson from the Toronto Star here in our studio. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.